today's show, I am joined by my co-host Anthony DiMarco. We break down everything from WWE this week and run down the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view match by match to give our predictions. Then I'll get started right after a word from our sponsor. So have you guys tried CBD oil? If you haven't, I'd really recommend that you do. My wife loves it. It helps her relax. And I found a website that is probably the most comprehensive that there is. And that's cbdbargainstore.com. That's cbdbargainstore.com. And when you go on this website, first of all, you'll get a 15% discount on your first order. And you can join the email list for continued great price deals. But they don't just sell the oil. They also sell balms, lotions, capsules, pure CBD oil, obviously, and several pet products for your furry family members. So what exactly is CBD? It's a natural chemical compound that comes from the hemp plant, and it's one of over 85 compounds found in hemp, known as cannabinoids. However, CBD is not a psychotropic cannabinoid like THC. It's not what you find in marijuana, so CBD does not produce intoxication or euphoria. And guess what? It works. Like I said, my wife uses it. I've tried it, and it really just helps you calm down if you have anxiety issues or if you're stressed. This really can be a really awesome product. And right now, you can check the best deal that I've seen out on cbdbargainstore.com. Again, you'll get 15% off of your first order. Just make sure you use the promo code CBD19. That's CBD19 to get the 15% off of your first order. And there's free shipping on orders of $75 and more. Oh, and did I mention that they have CBD peanut butter? Yeah, check that out. I love peanut butter, and if you love peanut butter, this is going to be your perfect combination. So check out cbdbargainstore.com. That's cbdbargainstore.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your place for the most passionate wrestling analysis on the web.
Just turn Roman heel. What is WWE waiting for?
When other wrestling podcasts put you to sleep, you can count on the WWE Podcast to keep you engaged and asking for more.
I've been watching wrestling for over 20 years, and that was one of the best matches I've ever seen.
If you're easily offended, this may not be the show for you.
Whatever happened to the men being able to physically retaliate against the women in WWE? This is a fantasy environment.
This is unlike any other wrestling analysis. So without any further delay, let's get the show started right now.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast on this Thursday, June 20th, 2019, the last day of spring. So summer actually starts tomorrow, the longest day of the year for daylight anyway. And after that, sadly, things start to turn the other way until we get to the winter, beginning of winter in December. So longest day of the year tomorrow. Enjoy it. It'll be light, at least where I am, until probably you can see the sunlight up until 9:15 at night. It's just nuts. So enjoy that and enjoy this podcast as well, because we have a great one for you. Might be, and I keep saying this, but I keep topping myself, the longest show in the history of the WWE Podcast. My co-host Anthony DiMarco and I, we chatted for over 2 hours about the status of WWE, the current product, Raw and Smackdown. Dove a little bit into the past, because a lot of the past is now relevant for what's going on now. So some cool tidbits there. And, of course, we give our predictions for the Stomping Grounds pay-per-view this Sunday. So get you all ready for that with some interesting selections. What is a pay-per-view that on paper looks very predictable. And so we got a couple of swerve picks for you there. And I think you'll enjoy it. But again, guys, if you guys don't like ads in the show and you're like, oh my God, too many ads, easy way to resolve that. Number one, you could just use your skip button on your phone, or you could get an ad-free experience for every single show that I've ever put out on Patreon. And you go to patreon.com/WWE podcast, and you can get all these shows ad-free. There's not one plug. It's just straight wrestling audio to your ears. And you just go to patreon.com/WWE podcast, and it's just $1. $1 will get you access to like a zillion shows that I've done. Okay, not a zillion. I don't even know if that's actually a numerical term, but a lot of shows that I've done that are a completely ad-free experience. So if you want ads to go away, there's your place to do it. So thank you guys once again for joining me, though, and please check out WWEpodcast.com, where I have published numerous articles over the past couple of days, too, talking about WWE, and I think you'll enjoy them. It's always a good read, not coming from me, not just my brain, other people's brains, which is a good thing. And so the site is growing in content. It's growing in general. This podcast is growing, as you guys know, and that's all thanks to you. So this will be the final show of the week, but I'll be starting a new week in just a few days on Sunday when I do my wrestling nostalgia and or what if segment. I haven't decided yet. So what I've decided to do, just so you guys know my schedule, is on Sunday I'll be doing my typical what if and or wrestling nostalgia segment. And then I will be taking Monday off from doing audio. And then Tuesday, I'll be doing a Raw show. Wednesday, I'll be reviewing SmackDown Live. Thursday will be my typical co-hosting spot. And then I'll take Friday and Saturday off. So you guys will get me 4 days a week. This week I did experiment with 5. I think 4 is more realistic for me just in terms of time. And I have other projects going on. So I think that Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday will be your audio pleasure of wrestling. And so I'll be off 3 days a week, working 4 days a week for you. So just so you guys know. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for making this a great show, a big show, and much more to come. As you guys know, this show is just getting started. So no further ado, let's just get you to the conversation with myself and Anthony. And everybody, enjoy your weekend. I'll be back Sunday. Take care. Okay, welcome to the WWE podcast. And this week, I have my third co-host in the rotating cast of 3, Anthony DiMarco, who is officially on the show as a co-host for the first time. And it's a blast to have him here. So, Anthony, welcome to the show. And congrats on being the official co-host of the WWE podcast.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's a real honor to get this position. I'd just like to thank everyone who voiced their opinion, who supported me and wanted me to be a permanent co-host. So thank you all, and especially thank you, Matt.
No, it's always great when I have an opinion that agrees with the masses, and you were one of the 3 that people were like, oh, you got to bring him back on, you got to make him a co-host. You guys had good chemistry, and so I was like, yes, all right, so I don't have to pick somebody that I didn't feel was the best choice, and I got my wish. So it's a blast to have you on, and we certainly don't have any shortage of things to talk about this week. There are a lot of things going on in WWE. Some of them good, some of them not, with the lowest SmackDown rating in the history of WWE. That's a non-holiday. That is a tell sign for WWE, and you can't really blame it on any kind of sporting event. You can't blame it on Memorial Day, 4th of July, and so we'll get to SmackDown Live. But so, Anthony, let me just ask you this. Out of this entire week in WWE, what are some of the things that really stood out and that you're like, we need to talk about this?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I'll start with a positive, is I actually like Seth Rollins' kind of change in character with the chair shot business that he's on right now. It kind of adds a new element to his character. I feel like he was getting a bit stale there for a bit, and it was just kind of getting repetitive, but it kind of gives him almost like a Steve Austin anti-hero type of thing that I'm really liking. And I guess, and then on a bit on the negative side of it, it's just kind of like the Shane McMahon in your face over and over and over and over and over and over and over again of Raw and SmackDown. It's just the same thing. It's like, it's just getting repetitive a bit, and I'm just kind of getting tired of it. So there's my big positive and there's my big negatives for this week so far.
And so I want to touch on that. I mean, I'm with you about the Shane McMahon deal. I was a proponent and still am a proponent of Shane McMahon staying heel. I think he's doing a very good job as a heel. But the problem is Shane McMahon is not the future, right? Shane McMahon's a 49-year-old son of the promoter who is the head of this stable that has no name that I know of, that should be and is starting to transition to focusing on the wrestlers, Drew McIntyre and Elias, who's just kind of there. So, yeah, I'm with you about the Shane deal. I understand what they're going for with the heat. But at some point, this is going to need to come to an end. There needs to have a faction that stands up to them and just dismantles them, and they all go their separate ways. But I'm with you on that. The chair shots with Seth Rollins, I'm all for too. I mean, that was a nice change, a nice big difference from what we have seen from Seth in the past of just kind of like talking, and there was no real aggression. There was no sense of urgency from Seth, it felt like. And he has seemingly snapped and become the chairman of WWE and gone around and just pummeled anybody that has thought about being a special guest referee for Baron Corbin. So I really liked that aggressiveness from Seth too. It needed to be done. As you said, Seth has been feeling a bit stale, and adding this to his character is just another layer that we need to see from Seth. We needed that, and I was glad to see it Monday night, and obviously bleeding into Tuesday night.
Yeah, and it brings almost like a realistic sense to the character, because anyone who's constantly being shadowed by a monster, by a guy like Brock Lesnar, and toyed with the potential cash-in, then you have Baron Corbin just always kind of like busting his balls in the background and like taking cheap shots at him. So it makes sense that eventually any normal person would come to this conclusion where you would snap eventually. So I like that. It shows it's more like of a realistic feel from Seth Rollins as opposed to just the repetitiveness that we both alluded to. But then to just go back to the Shane thing a bit, I really do like what Shane's doing. I've always been a big Shane McMahon fan, and I like the whole faction thing. I think factions are kind of a lost art in the WWE these days, or if they do get assembled, they're quickly died out. Like that awful faction, the League of Nations, way back in 2015, or what was it? But yeah, I like it. I like that now it's transitioning onto Drew McIntyre. But I think just as a result of this stupid wild card rule, it's kind of getting diluted a bit, that we're seeing it on both shows for more than once per show. So I just wish they would tone it down a bit, because I love the idea. I love the people in it. I love McIntyre. I love the revival. But I just think it's getting a bit too diluted.
And you mentioned wild card. What are your thoughts on the wild card? I'm hearing a lot of conflicting opinions, very strong opinions, one way and the other. What are your thoughts on this wild card rule?
If it was used to the pure definition of it, just like 3 random wrestlers per week could go on, maybe I could get behind it. Like I told you the first time I was on the show before I was a permanent co-host, I grew up in the Ruthless Aggression era. And that's when the brand split was in full force. And that was like, no one crossed over brands. The only time you saw crossovers was at the Royal Rumble. Now I understand it's not like that anymore, and I know they're more loosely with the rules. So like, I'm trying to be open to the idea, times change, but it's not even random 3 on each shows. It's now 4, 5, or 6, and it's always the same 4, 5, or 6. They're just using the wild card to use the same wrestlers week in, week out on both shows. It's not changing. It's always Sami Zayn going to SmackDown, Alexa Bliss going to SmackDown, Drew going to SmackDown. It's always Roman coming to Raw, Kevin Owens coming to Raw, Bayley coming to Raw. It's not being creative, and I thought the whole point was to give more creativity to the writing and make it more unpredictable, but it's actually become the exact opposite. It's predictable, same thing every week, and I absolutely hate it. Honestly, I can't stand it, and we're not seeing other wrestlers being used. Like, we've barely seen Cedric Alexander since he came up, and he was supposed to be like the big graduation from Cruiserweight to Raw. So yeah, I just think it's done more harm than good.
And it's also, I think, an admission, although it would never be admitted, but it's kind of a subset admission by WWE that of their failure to create big stars that can hold down both brands. So they have to take their biggest stars and put them on both shows. And as you just said, you already know who's going to be there. So this quote, this idea that the wild card is supposed to add this unpredictability factor that anything could happen at any time, it's done the opposite, because you know which stars are going to show up, and they've taken their top stars and just diluted the entire product with those stars, and now you've overexposed them on both shows twice a week. So it's not, you're doubling down on the problem by doing this, which is, it's really unbelievable when you think about it, that this rule was supposed to be doing the opposite of what it's actually doing. And if it was, as you said, implemented to a T in the exact way that it was meant to, yes, this could be a very cool idea. If NXT stars could do it, have we seen an NXT star come up and utilize this wild card rule? I mean, anybody. And furthermore, and I've said this before, and I won't get too much more into it, but how is this done? Nobody has explained to the fans how it's decided who shows up. I don't understand. Is it first come, first serve, first to the building? Nobody's explained this. So that furthermore is diluting this whole wild card thing, which is just, it's nonsensical. But as you said, I would love them to go back to totally split brands, I'll get it right, and they just have one world living in it of itself and an island, another island, and they never, ever, ever cross paths unless there's an absolute big reason to do it. Maybe it's WrestleMania. As you said, I remember when Goldberg and Brock Lesnar were on separate brands, and, I mean, back in 2004 when they had their terrible match at WrestleMania 20, but I remember how crazy it was to see, oh my God, Goldberg's on SmackDown, he's not supposed to be here, and it just felt much more exciting when it genuinely felt as if somebody was invading the other opposing brand's show. So we don't have that. Nothing's surprising. You know who's going to be there, and this whole thing is not even a wild card. It's just it's a quasi brand split, but really there's no brand split anymore. So.
No, yeah, and that's exactly it. And it just feels like they knew the ratings were down, so they wanted a reason to get top superstars from both brands and just use them on Raw and SmackDown. Like, look at this past week on Raw. Daniel Bryan versus Seth Rollins. That kind of match, zero build to it, no logic behind it. Like, it makes no sense, and you're just wasting it. And was it a good in-ring match? Of course it was. It's two of the best wrestlers there, but you're just wasting this to get cheap ratings, in my opinion, because you advertise this big-time match. And I think you're a big proponent of this. I don't care if the match is super good. If the story is garbage, or in this case, non-existent, I'm not going to care about it. I won't. I've never been a big guy of like, okay, well, we'll throw two really technical guys together out of nowhere and it'll draw attention. No, I'll get behind a really good story, even if I know that the in-ring product won't be its best. Like Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 17. We knew that the in-ring product wasn't going to be too good, but I, to this day, go back and watch that match because I remember the build to it and the build of Shane coming to his mother's aid and all this and the street fight and dad versus son and this and that. And now with this wildcard rule, like, except for like the same stories of Roman against Shane or Alexa Bliss against Bayley, and then somehow, some way, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn always weasel their way in as just guys who lose, because that's what I just feel like they are now, guys to put over the good guys. I don't know. It's just really bothersome to me that they're just using this to be creative, but it's the opposite. And it's just the same thing week in, week out. And just the stories have just gotten so diluted and just poorly written. And
we're not going to beat it at horse here, but I mean, we've said everything that there is to say in terms of the wild card execution, and I don't think we're being unfair. This is just the truth. I mean, the fact that you can bring a team over and only consider them as one out of the four wild cards is preposterous, because why doesn't everybody just say they're a team and, oh, we're all just considered one? So, I mean, like, it's just the ridiculousness of this, and the fact that they don't ever take the time to just give us basic details of how this works is maddening. It insults fans' intelligence, and it's lazy, sloppy booking to allow themselves leeway to book however they want without regulation to fit whatever story they want to fit at the time, even if there's no parameters for it. It's the worst possible storytelling that you could make if you're an author of any book. It's just terrible. So moving on, though, I'm going to move away from this because I could rant about the wild card for a while. I'm not going to do that. So what about Dolph Ziggler? Are you thinking like, hey, does Dolph Ziggler even belong in the main event picture? Do you think that Dolph Ziggler is deserving? Do you like that he is saying it should have been me? What's your take on Ziggler and Kofi Kingston?
Oh, well, I've always liked Dolph Ziggler. Because he's kind of a diverse character. You can kind of give him anything and he'll spin it into gold, if you will. But as we talked about when I came on the show about a month ago, I really liked at the beginning. I feel like the should have been me thing, the promos, it's starting to get a little bit repetitive. But I still like it, but even though he's kind of reverting back to like his screaming thing now. The one thing about Dolph, and I'm happy that he's getting a second match because I thought it was just going to be a one and done at Super Showdown. But I still feel like he's just a placeholder challenger, and it gets that feeling because he doesn't really, like, even though he's the number one contender for the WWE Championship, he's still kind of just on the side of it. Like, he comes out at the first segment of the show, he wrestles a match against Xavier Woods, and then he's done. And then the guy who he's challenging for the belt on Sunday is often a completely irrelevant tag team match. So even though I like, for the most part, what he's doing, and I think that he should have been there, no pun intended, even though I think that he belongs to be there, it gives off this feel, and this is more on the writing than him, that I'm not taking him seriously as a potential winner, and they're just kind of finding a placeholder challenger until they can find something more concrete heading into SummerSlam.
Yeah, he does. He feels like a placeholder, and I said this last night on the show that I did for the SmackDown review, is that Dolph Ziggler, the thing is, his character has been educated to fans for how many years now that he can wrestle his ass off. He can sell his ass off. He can cut a good promo. He's not a bad character. He's not bad on the mic. He's decent on the mic. I mean, aside from his screaming, and even when he's screaming, you're still paying attention. There are certainly worse guys in the business on the promo than Dolph Ziggler. He's, I would say, good to above average. And so the problem, though, is no matter how good his promo is, no matter how good he is in the ring, you just know, because of years and years and years of booking, that Dolph Ziggler is going to lose the big match. Because we have been educated to believe that, and I have no reason to believe otherwise until proven wrong. Dolph Ziggler's character has been a victim of creative booking and just booking that has destroyed the credibility of his character. Anytime he tells us he's going to win, he has to win. I will beat you. It's like, but you're not going to. You're like, Dolph, let's be real. You're not going to win. We all know you're not going to win. And that's the problem with his character, beyond the fact that he is one of the best in the ring and has been for quite some time, and he can make his opponent look like $1 million. That's a huge asset. But as you just said, Kofi Kingston, I think, is on a roll, and he is a people's champion, no pun intended, and anytime that, and I've said this before too, anytime Kofi Kingston, or anytime a champion wins the championship at WrestleMania, it's a championship win that needs to stick for 6 months. And I really believe that. You can't just have a champion win at WrestleMania and then have them lose the next month or 2 months after, because then it really means nothing. WrestleMania is the reset button. WrestleMania is the end-all, be-all. And on top of it, it doesn't hurt that Kofi Kingston's a black man. I mean, let's be honest. He is the perfect candidate right now for WWE's progressive ideology to placate, hey, we have an African-American champion. I mean, I don't think he's being used for that, but it certainly doesn't hurt that he is the face of WWE right now. There's a lot of things going against Dolph Ziggler, and those are just a couple of them. But overall, look, I am a fan of Dolph Ziggler to a point. I'm not going to go there and scream my face off like a 13-year-old girl for him, but I think that he has a lot of good qualities, and it's just unfortunate that they didn't strike while the iron was hot. And when I think the iron was the most hot for him was, I think it was the night after WrestleMania 27, don't quote me, maybe 27, 28, and he cashed in and won the World Heavyweight Championship against Alberto Del Rio, and he was a placeholder champion then, and he feels like a placeholder contender now.
Yeah, because if memory serves me correctly, they ended up at the end of that feud, it culminated in a double turn with him and Alberto Del Rio, if I'm not mistaken, where like in one match they swapped heel and face positions. And honestly, like that whole feud, like I just hated Alberto Del Rio. I thought he was the most boring thing I'd ever seen, and they were just kind of recreate Eddie Guerrero, to be honest. But yeah, to get back on Dolph Ziggler, like it's just kind of been the same thing over and over and over again with him. I did think they were kind of rejuvenating it with his initial face run when they first did the brand split in 2016, or the second brand split, I must say, because he was the initial number one contender to Dean Ambrose at the time on SmackDown to the WWE Championship. They actually had a title match at SummerSlam that year. So and then he kind of had that feud with The Miz over the Intercontinental Championship. And I thought that it was going places, and then it just kind of died again. And then he did the whole, like, the no music thing, the no entrance themes thing, and then he walked out after winning the U.S. title. So I just found that his character has been kind of hard to follow. He's all over the place. He was somewhat relevant when he teamed with Braun and McIntyre last year when he was on Raw. It's just, and I feel bad because I do like the wrestler for the most part, but it's just been way too hard to follow because he's been all over the place. He's been face, he's been heel, he's been kind of cocky and arrogant, or now he's kind of psycho. It's just too much, and I don't see how there's any way that he actually wins this title or how I can even take him seriously.
You can't, and that's a good point too, that his character, there's zero consistency in his, not just, as you said, heel and face, just his personality. Like, we don't know who he is. Outside of a great in-ring wrestler, we just don't know who he is, and I'm sure that him as a person is extremely frustrated with creative just not giving him a clear path and saying, yeah, you're this month, this next month, but we'll see how this goes, and then we pull back, and then there's just stop, start, go over here, go over there, and when you get to that point, no matter how good you are in the ring, fans get complacent. They just go, who cares? I mean, like, this guy's clearly not the guy that WWE is going to get behind. How can we get behind him if we know that he's going nowhere? And that's exactly where Dolph Ziggler is, and it's really unfortunate because I really think he could have been a top guy had they given him a serious run and go all in with him at one point, but they never have. So let's get to something that we like, and something that I like, and I think I brought this up last time, but it is a shining light in my week of WWE, and that's the Firefly Funhouse. Now, I can't remember. Are you a fan of the Firefly Funhouse?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Now that we're, almost 2 months, closing in maybe on 2 months of this, are you still as big of a fan? Are you ready to just say, oh my God, just debut already? Where do you stand with this?
I've loved it. There was a point where that one episode of him when he was like dancing and it was almost like a weird music video. Dance. Yep. And I looked at my girlfriend. I'm just like, did we take LSD? And I didn't know. But on a serious note, there was a point where I was like, okay, it's kind of getting old, but it actually worked out perfectly because they dropped the whole Fiend thing for a bit, and there was either 2 or 3 weeks where you didn't really see him, and now he pulls you back in, and this episode was just amazing because now it's starting to make a lot more sense that, like, from what I'm taking from it is that he's saying, like, he was always rejected, so he created this alter ego to protect himself from it. And I just think it's amazing. I think they're really pushing the boundaries here of PG. Again, I think you shared the same concern, or the only concern I may have is that I just hope that when he finally does debut, they execute it properly because they've built it so well, better than anything they've done in the last number of years, that it would just kill me to see them just butcher it when he finally does debut. But as of right now, I think it's the best thing they have going.
WWE cannot, under any circumstances, screw this up. They can't. This is one of the best things, as you said, that they have had going in. I can't remember the last time. When is the last time that WWE has utilized vignettes, videos, promos, whatever, to this extent to where there's this much anticipation for not only the video itself, but also when is he going to debut? I can't wait. What's going to happen? How's it going to be? Is he going to come out in a sweater vest? Is he going to come out as the Fiend? How's it going to work? Is he going to be like Finn Balor and kind of a regular guy, but bring out the demon when he needs to? I don't know. And I think that's the interesting part, but also the part that I'm scared of. Like, I'm nervous that they are going to really, really mess this up, and they can't. And Bray Wyatt has done an amazing, amazing job going all in with this character. Like, when I look at Bray Wyatt, I believe that he's like that in real life. He's gotten me to that point where I believe that he is this crazy. Of course, I still know it's fantasy, but at the same time, when I'm watching, I get lost, and that's what I miss watching WWE. And I watch this Firefly Funhouse every week, and I'm looking for Easter eggs, and I'm looking for hints, and there's so many layers to every episode that he's done that you could spend hours every week dissecting just that episode because of just all the different things that he's put in each episode, between the characters' names and the things that he says, the looks that he gives, the way he says things. There are so many different things that you could dissect that it's so complex, but it's easy to follow at the same time. And he's a master at making you just in pulling you in right now. He's masterful at that, and he has got us hooked. And it's been 2 months, I think, around 2 months, probably a little bit less, but it's been I don't think I'm not to the point of, oh my God, I'm sick of this. Let's just get him in the ring. I want this to go as long as it needs to go, and I want creative behind the scenes and Vince McMahon to make sure they have all of their ducks in a row and have a long-term plan for Bray Wyatt, not just, well, we'll debut him against, I don't know, Matt Hardy and see how he does. No. They need to have a vision and stick by their guns and go all out with this character and see their plan through, which hopefully is a 3 to 6 month, maybe even longer plan for Bray Wyatt. I need this to succeed. Bray needs this to succeed, and WWE cannot flop on this.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that when he does come out, it's not just him, squashing people, like just no names or really odd bottom card guys. Because you mentioned this the last time we spoke about it. He's already an established wrestler. Sure, he's been repackaged to the fullest extent, but people know who Bray Wyatt is. He's been a WWE champion. He's been around since 2012 or whatever it is. He can't just come in and, squash like Apollo Crews or whatever, one of the guys chasing the 24/7 title. He has to come in and get into a feud that's worthwhile, like come in and attack Roman Reigns or take or fight with Kofi Kingston. I want him to come in and make an impact, because already his story of the Firefly Funhouse is making such an impact, and he's not even in the ring. So I don't want him to show up on either Raw or SmackDown, or at this rate both, and take a back seat. I want him to come in, and I want this story to be the focal point of the show, because I think it can be, and I think people want it to be. And he's just such a mastermind at it, as you brought up. And he's good in the ring. We've seen him be good in the ring. I just think that when he comes out, they better pick their spot properly, because it can't just be a storyline on the back burner. It has to be front and center. It has to be in a major storyline, or possibly for a title. I don't know what they're going to do, but I just know that they have to make it worthwhile. It can't just be an afterthought.
No. It absolutely can't. WWE has no choice on this one. And I don't say that lightly. I don't know if I've said that in quite a while. But if they botch this, there's going to be, I think, a lot of angry fans that are, they might, I don't want to say they'll rebel, but you could turn a lot of fans off very quickly if this is failed, and it's failed on the part of WWE. And Bray Wyatt has put so much effort into this and has done an amazing job. So, but let's touch on the women's division. And I have some quick thoughts. So in general, for a while it felt as if Becky Lynch, I think, has been cooled off, and I think that she has been kind of just flopping out there since WrestleMania. I alluded to a few weeks ago that maybe it's because she hasn't had the great dance partner of Ronda Rousey hanging around, which I think is a big contributing factor. And you have Lacey Evans, who's been put front and center against Becky Lynch. And while some people may really, really dislike Lacey Evans and think she's undeserving, and yes, she had a terrible match against Charlotte a number of weeks ago. Of course, it was awful. It was probably the worst match of the year. But you need to establish new stars and build new stars. You can't just have all the time stars against stars. You need to have people that are up and coming, and after WrestleMania is the perfect time to do it, to build that new star for the new year. And I think, overall, Lacey Evans has done a good job as the heel. I don't think she's masterful in the ring. She does need work, but that'll come in time. She's got her promo down better than most do when they come up from NXT, even though she does speak a little bit slow, and Becky Lynch alluded to that pretty well on Monday Night Raw. But I think she's got a good presence. I don't mind her right now as the challenger because I want to see Lacey Evans get her ass kicked, and that's what I want to feel. And Becky Lynch, on the other hand, has kind of felt lukewarm. I haven't got that spark, that energy that I want as Becky Lynch really had when she turned heel and turned her really into the biggest babyface in WWE, but has since cooled off. And right now, she's, I don't think, going to be getting back to that status when she's in a program with Lacey Evans. However, right now, I'm fine with Lacey Evans going against Becky Lynch. We all know Lacey Evans isn't going to win the championship, at least not at this time. So those are my thoughts. What do you think about the women's division? And not just even Becky and Lacey Evans, but the SmackDown women's division as well.
Well, I think the women's division as a whole has kind of, I won't say torpedoed, but it hasn't been as good as it was pre-WrestleMania. Because leading up to WrestleMania, I would argue that it was much more entertaining than the men's division. But since WrestleMania, Charlotte's she's been there, but now, like, the past few weeks, she's kind of not been around. Sasha Banks has been on a hiatus. We haven't really seen Naomi or Ember Moon in prominent roles. So it's kind of just been Bayley, Becky, and Lacey Evans. Becky, I find she's gotten really stale. I feel like her promos have just become the same thing, calling people blokes or what have you. And I won't say that I'm happy that she's cooled off to this extent, but I am also, because I think people took Ronda Rousey for granted, and they didn't realize just how good Rousey was in promos and in the ring. And as you said before, she was a great dance partner for Becky. I personally really like Lacey Evans. Obviously, she does need work in the ring, but I think she's hammered down her character perfectly. Her promos are good. You understand her standpoint, and she's just not quite there to elevate Becky's game. I just think that Becky's become just repetitive, and it's the same thing, and we know that people have held you down and blah, 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 and I don't know, I've had a hard time getting behind Becky lately, but as for Lacey, I think she's been the best part of the women's division up until Alexa Bliss getting back into in-ring competition, because I think the Alexa Bliss-Bayley storyline is much more intriguing, aside from the fact that Alexa Bliss is a Raw competitor fighting for the SmackDown Women's title, but we already touched on the wildcard rule. But as a whole, I think that storyline of Bayley and Alexa is much more intriguing than Becky and Lacey right now.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought up Becky and Alexa, because that's something I wanted to talk about as well. But just to finish up on Becky and Lacey, I really think that they, as you said, Lacey Evans has her character down more than most do, and more than some more established stars do. And she has come up from NXT and made an impact quickly. And that's what you want. And she feels different than most of the women. That's what you want too. You want to differentiate yourself from the pack. She's done that. She's the sassy Southern Belle or whatever cute nickname they give her, but she plays the part. She goes all in. That's what I want. And she does it. And she's got a really good-looking finish. I like the woman's right. It's nice. It's kind of the female version of Big Show's WMD, Weapon of Mass Destruction. I'm fine with it. I think it's unique. And, on top of that, Becky, as you said, has kind of just spun her wheels. I mean, that's a good analogy. She's just there running on old fumes, not giving us something new to get behind her on. She's just still kind of in WrestleMania post-match mode instead of looking ahead and just saying the same things. You said it good. I mean, she's just saying, everybody's held me down. I've done this all my life. I've put dopes down like you. Okay, well, come on. We need something more, Becky. Please. Right now I'm starting to lose a little bit of interest in Becky Lynch. She's nowhere near how hot she was. If you would put her at a 10 from how hot she was the night after the Royal Rumble, I'd say she's about a 3 or a 4 right now. That's based on crowd reaction. That's just based how I feel sitting at home watching her. I mean, I'm interested when she comes out, but I don't have that unpredictable feeling. I don't have the rebellious nature, that instinct that I felt when Becky Lynch came out. She's just kind of another one of the women, and she's happens to be champion, and I don't want that for Becky Lynch. As far as Bayley and Alexa go, man, that promo they had on SmackDown, while they clearly booked it for a work shoot promo, it came across very real. And I'm sure that some of that material was instinctual and from their own brains in the moment. And that's what I love too. When Alexa noted to Bayley, hey, you peaked in NXT. What have you done since you got here? And boy, is that true. Since Bayley got here, outside of her being she was some surprise tag team partner, I forget at what pay-per-view, she has just gone up, down, 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 down. And her and Sasha going back and forth, and the love you, hate you mode for a year and a half, and the Bayley, this is your life that she had with, ironically, Alexa Bliss a year and a half ago. None of that did her any favors. And the promo they had, it brought it all back together. It made Bayley human again. It really also kind of made me side with Alexa, because she had a lot of good, valid points that, as a heel, I typically I'm not supposed to, I feel like, agree with and, see their side of it. But they both had some scathing things to say. And yes, of course, it was a work shoot promo, but I don't know. I loved it. What did you think about that on SmackDown Live?
Oh, it was really good. It felt real. It felt authentic. In general, I've liked the Nikki Cross element to it. I like that, the whole manipulation on the part of Alexa Bliss. And yeah, I just think that a lot of it felt like it came from the gut with them. It's made me care about Bayley. It's not just like she was the cartoon character, and at first it was fine, but then the fire died out quick. But lately, I like seeing her come out just in street clothes, in jeans and a t-shirt and regular girl heels or whatever. And it just felt like she's more relatable now. And so it makes me care about Bayley. It makes me want to support her. And Alexa, well, she's just always been great as a heel and getting heat. But yeah, I'm really invested in this match. I'm looking forward to this match, as opposed to the Raw one where I just really couldn't care at this point. But yeah, I really like what Bayley and Alexa have done, and that promo they had on SmackDown was amazing.
And it like you said, in one fell swoop, they made me care about this program more than they have ever since they started having a feud, and that was years ago too. This is not something I want to see all the time. I don't need this work shoot style every single time. But when it's done in dribs and drabs here and there, when you don't see it coming, that's when it's the most effective. So just because it was super effective this week doesn't mean I want to see it every single week. I don't mind the typical WWE created promo. Sometimes that's not a bad thing to have. I don't want to make it feel like they're reading lines, but I also don't need the shoot aspect all the time, because it takes me out of the moment. I need it occasionally. So yeah, the street clothes thing, and while Alexa said it looks like you're working at Forever 21, which made me laugh, it did humanize her, just as it did with Drew McIntyre, not constantly seeing him in street clothes or in his wrestling gear, and having him just wear jeans and a shirt or whatever. Just the simple thing of that humanizes people quickly. And Bayley was a cartoon character. Bayley buddies, I just like to hug people, I come out and I'm all colorful. Who's Bayley? I need to know who you are as a person and what your mission is. Apparently you're done giving hugs, but your Bayley buddies are still here. I don't know. I don't know, but the Nikki Cross thing is interesting too. And for Bayley to say to Nikki, hey, do you remember Nia Jax? What did Alexa do to Nia Jax? You remember Mickie James? What did she do to Mickie James? How do you not see this coming? And interestingly too, I don't know if this was by design or not, but Nikki Cross never actually punched, kicked, did anything to Bayley to pull her off of Alexa, other than just pull her off. There was no actual physical exchange between the two. So whether Nikki Cross turns on Alexa or not remains to be seen. But it was just interesting that they never actually had a physical exchange in that moment that she could have. And there was also a pause or a hesitation by Nikki after Bayley had started attacking Alexa. So that's just something interesting. But yeah, to take Nikki Cross into this, it does add another layer. I don't know what the end game is for Nikki, but I hope it ends with Nikki not looking like a fool.
You know, Matt, you said something in there that I wanted to touch on, because it doesn't have to do with the women particularly, but you said that it worked this week, so I hope they don't keep using it and it gets diluted. Because I think we've touched on, when Vince McMahon likes something, he beats that thing to death. And one thing that I don't understand why he keeps going to is Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. You know, I don't understand why that these two constantly have to be paired together as just glorified trolls. And because they have relatively big names attached to them, that like their losses will automatically put over the over guys. And it's just been something bothering me that like these guys, like I've had seen them been built in matches like final time ever, culmination of former best friends. They won't meet again. Now one's on Raw, one's on SmackDown. But then for some reason, they're always just put back together as giant trolls. And it's bothering me that like it's been going on for so long now, because now we're coming up on 2 years that the whole thing started with the angle against, ironically, Shane McMahon. That's all that they've been. And since the days where Sami Zayn was actually a somewhat relevant mid-card guy and Kevin Owens was a competitor against AJ Styles for the US title and the Universal Championship. And now I just feel like because their whole slightly heel comedic act worked, that's all they use these guys for. And I just feel like these guys are being wasted big time.
Now I'm going to try to remain a little calm here, because last night I went off on this topic that that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, they are sorely underutilized, and that is being the most mild I can be. They have such an upside. I don't care if Vince McMahon looks at Kevin Owens and says, "Look at him, he's got a beer gut. He can't be the face of the WWE." I mean, I feel like that's what Vince McMahon is thinking. And I don't know why. They put him as Universal Champion, and since that time, after Triple H handed it to him, if we all forgot, he lost to Goldberg, and then he just spiraled down into an abyss. And once he was doing these promo videos to come back, if you want to call them promo videos, he's in a bowling alley with his kids, he's at a movie theater, and he comes back as a babyface, and I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I want to see how this Kevin Owens babyface run goes. And they cut that so quickly that I mean, everyone said, oh, they shouldn't have done it that quick. And I'm kind of torn, because we all knew the other shoe was going to drop. It was a matter of time when he turned heel. Okay, so he turns heel. He's back to where we all thought he was going to be anyway. But then they just have him lose and lose and lose. What has Sammy done since he came back and was a critic of the critics, which I think has gotten good momentum? And I actually enjoy. It's something different, unique. And they bring out an electric chair one week, which made no sense. But they had an interaction with fans, and it seemed legitimate. It didn't seem like they were plants in the audience. You get to ask Sami Zayn questions, and he attacks the fans, and he's the critic of the critics. I think that was great. It was original. I am enjoying it. And they gave him a lot of time to do it. And yet Braun Strowman comes out, flattens him. You know, Kofi Kingston beats him. Like, and I know wins and losses don't really matter too much in the world of professional wrestling, this fantasy environment. But I can't get behind characters that lose and lose and lose and lose. And two guys that could easily, either one, be a top guy. And I'm talking champion. Just as Samoa Joe, and maybe we'll touch on Samoa Joe too. You can put Samoa Joe in this argument too. All three guys, why are they being just pushed to the side, not given an opportunity to take the ball and just go to the end zone when they could easily do it? All three are very experienced, independent scene. They've had their independent scene run. They know who they are. They understand the business. They understand the psychology. They can work a crowd. They can have amazing matches, and yet they lose week after week after week. And maybe, and I said this last night, maybe it's because, for Kevin Owens anyway, that he's being punished by management for not going to Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I don't know the reasoning, but it is maddening that these three guys who could, if, my God, maybe they're eyeing AEW, because if they ever go to AEW and are allowed to just creatively do whatever they want, look out. I mean, I'm sure they feel handcuffed. I'm sure all three feel frustrated. So I'll just stop there.
Well, yeah, and we saw glimpses of the old Kevin Owens when he was like that vicious heel and he could really be a force to be reckoned with. Sami Zayn, it feels as though, like, unless he's just riding shotgun with Kevin Owens, he's a nobody to them. And it's kind of weird because when he first came back and he was the critic of the critics, you thought, like, okay, they're finally going to let him go off on his own. But no, he just somehow inexplicably used the wild card rule again, jumped to SmackDown, and now he's basically riding shotgun with Kevin, like I just said. As for Samoa Joe, it's feeling like Bray Wyatt all over again, where he's like this vicious, evil heel, and like no one can stop him. And then I remember you talked about how like Samoa Joe has this aspect that even when he loses, he makes you believe that he's going to come back better than ever. But even when he loses now, he always has that like look of shock on his face. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where he gets rolled up and he's like completely distraught, but it happens so often. He loses so much that look on his face, it's not even realistic anymore. It's almost funny to me because you're just like, how is he shocked? This always happens to him. He always loses. And I know that they put the U.S. title back on him, which I am happy about because I think he's a guy that could benefit from it and the title could benefit from him as well. I still find it ridiculous that he got it because Rey Mysterio just vacated it. I remember you touched on it. Like, when has that ever happened before? The title never just gets vacated and then handed to someone. It always has to be fought for, like what happened with Roman Reigns when he had to go away for his leukemia. So even though they put the belt back on Joe, it doesn't mean anything because they just handed it to him. But another thing is, like, do titles mean anything anymore? Obviously, the two major titles of the Universal and the WWE mean something. But, again, Finn Balor, besides his win against Andrade at Super Showdown, I don't even know if I've seen him on television, let alone win a match since he's been drafted to SmackDown. Samoa Joe is the U.S. champ, but I don't think he's won a match since being the U.S. champ. And as for the tag team titles, well, Hawkins and Ryder literally lost their first title defense since WrestleMania. And that's just ridiculous to me. Like, I think people had forgotten that they had these titles. And that's why they eventually just put them back on the Revival. So, yeah, I think Joe at this point is just a very big victim of just how badly they use the titles right now.
It's a crime. I mean, I feel like this could be a felony of sorts. Like, there's got to be some kind of penal code for this. It's awful. And Samoa Joe is a guy that could easily be a top guy. And when I said that about Samoa Joe and his promos, he is. You could have him lose, and his promo the next night would make you feel like he won, and you want to see him lose again. He's got that ability, and that is an ability I don't really know anybody has that I can think of beyond Samoa Joe. It is such a good quality, but he loses and loses and loses. It's as if his one win was a fluke win, and it happened to be for a championship. And since then, I mean, he constantly loses. At WrestleMania, I said, okay, here we go. He beat Rey Mysterio in like a blink of an eye. They're going to finally strap the rocket to him. He's just going to tear through in the SmackDown Live roster, and they're just going to have him be a bulldozer, and he loses and loses and loses on roll-ups and roll-ups and roll-ups. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that Samoa Joe would lose on a roll-up, the guy that nearly beat Brock Lesnar straight up. So, but as far as the tag team champions go, if we're going to jump into that realm, the Revival, yeah, I think it's simply because they are associated with Shane McMahon and they want to get more heat on that faction that they have the gold. And they were told, if you bring the gold, you can come to the party. Well, they brought the gold, and now they're invited to that backstage champagne, lobster, whatever it was, that Roman Reigns ended up crashing. But on the flip side, I'm really liking Rowan and Bryan as champions on SmackDown Live. And Heavy Machinery, I really think that they are good, formidable opponents for Daniel Bryan and for Rowan. Rowan, who has been reinvented from the really the third wheel of the Wyatt family and has been re-educated to us as a legitimate threat, a legitimate big man, a guy that can take a lot of punishment, kick out of finishers, and is the heavy for Daniel Bryan. And I'm really liking this duo, the Planet's champions. I think that Daniel Bryan has done a great job with his veganism brought to the max to be arrogant and obnoxious. And they're doing a really good job, despite the fact that they are not being booked to be anywhere near the focal point of the show. They are always a highlight of the show because Daniel Bryan is so believable, and his delivery is always very smooth. It's easy to understand, and they're arrogant. And the fact that Daniel Bryan has been able to pull the wool over fans' eyes, and in a way that you resent Daniel Bryan now, a character that we never thought we'd hate again, is just a tribute to the genius and mastery that is Daniel Bryan, and Rowan is certainly benefiting from this, and that's always a plus.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan's brilliant. I think he's one of the best talkers right now. He's a great wrestler, and he's just great in whatever role he does. He's really taken the ball and run with it in this full-blown heel vegan mode. And I think Rowan has really excelled. He got a shot, and he's really taken advantage of it. And it's good to see how well they're doing, because it seemed as though before WrestleMania, SmackDown was loaded with tag teams, and now all of a sudden there's none. Jeff Hardy got hurt, so the Hardy Boys don't exist right now. The Usos went to Raw. The New Day have basically been taken out because of what's gone on with Kofi. The Bar inexplicably dismembered, and now Cesaro is off being some weird character on Raw that we'll get to. But yeah, I really like what they've done on SmackDown, Rowan and Bryan, that is. I like how Bryan has alluded to the fact that SmackDown has no formidable tag team challengers. As for Heavy Machinery, I really like them. They feel like an old school type tag team. I find them funny too, and they're well-placed comedy because it's organic. They don't go out of their way to, but they also are good in the ring. I find them entertaining, and I think it's a good kind of feud because obviously Heavy Machinery are rather heavier set guys, so Daniel Bryan can kind of, grasp onto that about the whole vegan thing and being healthy and not stuffing your face with gluten. But yeah, that's been a really bright spot. I've always liked Daniel Bryan. Rowan's been a nice touch, and they've had good chemistry with Heavy Machinery.
Yeah, and while we're on that subject, as you said about Cesaro, though, I don't know what they're doing with Cesaro. I don't think Cesaro knows what they're doing with Cesaro. It's just another iteration of them trying to find, and Cesaro trying to find who he is. We all know he is freakishly strong in the ring. He's a great competitor. He is in incredible shape. All of that is true. Check, check, check. The problem is he has never been able to organically connect with the fans on a level that's outside of the tag team of the Bar. And even the Bar didn't really, it never connected with me. I understood who they were, but I never was saying, oh, hey, yeah, I understand I connect. I feel what you're doing. They just kind of came up with a catchphrase that, we aren't the Bar, we set the bar, whatever. And they never just felt like they were something that would be long-term. They were just good in-ring competitors. And now Cesaro, as you said, is doing this, whatever he's doing with new music. Okay, he's refreshed with new music. I'd like to see a promo from him to let us know who he is. But his in-ring competition on Monday night certainly spoke for itself, and that's where he does most of his talking, is in the ring. And his crazy strength that what he showed against Braun Strowman was just otherworldly. And he has that ability to go toe to toe with anybody and put on a 5-star match if given the time. So, obviously that match was really more focused around Braun Strowman, who tossed everybody around for, half the match until he was eliminated by two guys who were already eliminated and then hit, about 3 finishers on him before he was taken out of the match. So, what did you think about that match, and what did you think about Cesaro getting kind of repackaged?
Well, the match was good. The match was entertaining. I think it was like a cool aspect that it was the elimination factor. As for Cesaro, I think it's never been in doubt how good he is in the ring. I remember even before the bar, he had one or two really, really good matches with John Cena on Raw, and people were always kind of waiting for him to break out. And then when he got paired with Sheamus, well, I was personally a fan of the bar. I liked them. I've always liked Sheamus, and I found that they were also kind of like an old school, like brutish tag team. But ever since he's been repackaged, it kind of made me realize why he was in a tag team. Because I don't know who he is. I don't know what his character is. And I found it weird because I feel like there was even confusion between him and the creative. Because when he first started coming out on Raw solo, post WrestleMania without Sheamus, he came out using Sheamus's music. And then they quickly switched it to new music. But then for the biggest while, he was still coming out with the bar wrestling attire and doing the sign coming to the ring, while the commentators were making no reference to the bar. And it's only been the past few weeks where he's gotten rid of the sign and got rid of the attire. So it's almost been me just not taking him seriously, because obviously he's good in the ring and no one can take that away from him. But it's just the whole character direction just doesn't make sense. He hasn't said a word since coming over to Raw and being dismembered from the bar. So I can't get behind him because I just don't know who he is. I don't know why he's there. I don't know why him and Sheamus broke up. I know for real reasons I think Sheamus left to go film Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. But just tell me why. Tell me what happened. Just tell me anything. You know, it could be as easy as when Bobby Roode and Chad Gable split. And Roode just said, he was weighing me down and I shed 200 pounds of nothing. Okay, at least I get it. At least I know why. But, I have no reason as to why one of the most successful tag teams over the last 2.5 years randomly dismembered. So, yeah, but it's just been kind of hard for me to get behind him when it's, there's been no explanation as to why he's solo.
It's kind of a funny point. I mean, when you see Cesaro outside of a tag team, you just said it. I mean, you go, oh, that's why they put him in a tag team. And him and Sheamus, before they became the bar, were having a best-of-7 series. And if you remember, they got to Game 7, if you will. They got to the 7th match, of course. And I believe that match ended in a draw. And so Mick Foley decided to put them together, and they reluctantly were together for I don't know how many months before they finally started to gel and just accepted each other. And the fans got behind him. For a while, it was boo Sheamus, yay Cesaro, boo Sheamus, yay Cesaro. And then they just kind of morphed into one, and you know, outside of their catchphrase, they didn't say a whole lot. It was just their catchphrase. And so now that he's on his own, he needs to tell us his identity and tell us it fast. While you kind of alluded to it, and I agree that I'll get behind him because I like Cesaro as an in-ring performer. I respect him so much, and he's so good that I'll get behind him until they tell me otherwise. But I'm not going to get super excited about who he is or where he's going until I'm told who he is. Until they tell me something. But WWE doesn't care about detail. And Vince McMahon, you can hear him backstage saying, oh, people don't remember that. People don't care. They just want to be entertained. Well, here's how you entertain people, by telling them detail and rewarding them for paying attention to detail. But that's not going to happen. You know we'll never get an explanation. Just as, and I don't know why I keep bringing this up, but it irks me, Charlotte got a SmackDown Women's Championship title match a week before WrestleMania, and she won. I mean, there was zero explanation against Asuka for that. I mean, things like that. How can you overlook that? How can you not tell fans why this is happening or how it's happening? Obviously, Cesaro and Sheamus breaking up, I don't think is on the scale of Charlotte winning the SmackDown Women's Championship a week before WrestleMania, but it's that same logic, that same mentality that WWE has creatively, Vince McMahon, that we don't need to tell him, we'll come up with something later. No one's going to ask. Well, we're asking. Why wouldn't we want to know? And it's a fundamental problem with WWE.
And you know what? I like that you brought up the lack of logic, because this is something, and it's been amplified by the wild card rule, that's been bothering me. Why is it that heels who have never come into contact before, or heels that have had past beef with each other, just because they're heels, they're friends. Like, why do Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens inexplicably have the back of Baron Corbin? Why is it that, like, Baron Corbin can bump into Bobby Lashley backstage and all of a sudden they're buddies? And it goes on to SmackDown. Shane McMahon's walking into the building. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are there to greet him and kiss his ass. Do we not remember what went on a year and a half ago that lasted 6 months between Shane McMahon and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn? It's just like, I understand the premise of it, that eventually heels will side with heels and babyfaces will side with babyfaces, but, like, let me know why you guys are siding, like, with each other. I always found it cool when heels would come into contact with each other and they would actually, like, have a bit of beef and say, like, oh, you know, like, I don't like you, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or whatever it is. But, like, just give me something. Like, I just can't get behind, like, oh, okay, they're together because they're two heels. No, why are they together? Why is this guy backing this guy? And it's too much of just, like, it's just lazy. Like, oh, yeah, like you mentioned about Vince McMahon. Oh, yeah, they won't remember that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens made Shane McMahon's life a living hell for 5 or 6 months on end. It's just like, give me something. It just can't be so easy as heels are friends of heels and babyfaces are friends of babyfaces.
I think maybe the logic would be, if I'm talking to Vince McMahon, why are all heels automatically friends? Maybe his explanation would be, well, fans aren't going to care about two heels fighting each other. There's no investment there. They have nobody to get behind. And that's probably what he would say, is that's the reason that no one would care who wins if they got in any kind of argument or program, because no one would care. However, you could create a new star and see who the fans would organically get behind by putting two heels together. They did that, maybe you remember or not, with Kurt Angle and Triple H, when Kurt Angle was getting with Stephanie McMahon and getting a little close, but Triple H was still the heel. So do you side with Angle or do you side with Triple H? And WWE left it up to the fans to decide. That's how you create it.
Yeah, and exactly. It culminated at SummerSlam 2000 in a triple threat match with The Rock. And it actually happened where the Kurt Angle and Triple H brawled for about 10 minutes before The Rock even got to the ring. And now I'm not like, you are right, because why would heels, like, go against each other? The fans would get behind it. And I'm not saying that, but it's more so in the fact that, like, why are Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens so behind helping Baron Corbin out? Why can't heels try and undercut each other? Like, I liked it a bit when Baron Corbin tried to, like, take advantage of Drew McIntyre in a number one contenders match. Something like that. I want a bit more meat behind the storyline. Like, explain to me why they're helping him. I'm not saying that they have to, you know, go against each other, because you are right. I don't think there would be too much emotional investment in it from the fans. But at the same time, it can't just be, oh, okay, well, they're both bad guys, so he's going to automatically come out to help him. Like what happened at the end of Raw, where, like, all these different people were coming out, like the Usos came out to help the New Day just because they're both good guys, like in the Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins match. I just don't like how just, like, all these different storylines will intertwine and people will side with each other just because ones are booked as baby faces and the other ones are booked as heels. And that's the only explanation we get for it.
I think it's just reasons. I mean, that just reasons. I mean, that you're right that there are no inexplicable, rational reasons why heels and faces are all just you're on my side of the land, you're on my side of the train tracks. We all like you. Once you cross over, we automatically dislike you. I mean, that's not reality. That's not life. But it's the life of WWE's interpretation of professional wrestling. So now I do want to get to Stomping Grounds, but before I get into Stomping Grounds, is there anything else that maybe I didn't touch on from this week that you wanted to get to?
Well, there was one little tidbit of SmackDown that happened backstage, and it was the whole Apollo Crews Andrade part, where, you know, Andrade basically got Zelina Vega to goad in Apollo Crews, and then he attacked him. And I actually liked that story, and I'm just like, oh, this is like a cool, fresh storyline. And then it made me realize, like, because of the wild card rule, all these guys got in this week of WWE programming was a minute and a half of a backstage segment. But that's why I liked the brand split, because guys like Andrade and Apollo Crews would get screen time, and it was fresh feuds. And those are two guys that Andrade much more so than Apollo Crews, but those are two guys that are very good in the ring and I think have potential, but they're just buried because Raw and SmackDown are constantly being taken up by the same guys and the same storylines. And I just feel like if they just left the brand split alone, these are two guys that could actually have a really good undercard feud and maybe eventually culminate in an Intercontinental Championship match or number one contenders match. And again, like, where is Finn Balor? And I think he's also a victim of this wild card rule. So that whole segment backstage made me realize that I want to see newer wrestlers, and I like a lot of the wrestlers they're not using, and just kind of makes me despise the wild card that much more.
We keep coming back to the wild card, but a lot of the source of the problem is the wild card that's been implemented. And that is a side effect, a negative side effect, another that we can just tally up on this bandwagon of just terrible ideas, is that, yes, because you are now bringing in the same predictable wrestlers into each show, now that takes away from the guys that would have gotten the screen time to build new stars for the guys that are already here to just kind of run the same main storyline through and have the leftovers on SmackDown and the real the progression of the storylines on Raw, and then the leftovers of SmackDown. It's the same thing over and over and over now since it's been implemented. And guys like Andrade, who, as you said, Andrade is so damn good in the ring. He's so damn good. Zelina Vega adds so much to his character. I love that pairing. They are so good together. Apollo Crews, who I think inarguably may have been one of the, I'd say, least successful NXT call-ups since NXT has been a thing. And he was actually, I believe, one of the first NXT call-ups. Yeah, that could be the spark for Apollo Crews that he needs in his career, going against Andrade, who could make him look really good in the ring. It was, and it is a feud that I want to see, but it's a blink of an eye in terms of the airtime that it's given, because we got to worry about Shane McMahon and his faction, or is Roman Reigns going to come out here? I mean, it's the same thing as Seth Rollins going to attack somebody from behind with a chair, which I like, but again, it's overexposing the top guys when I want to see less of them, which makes it more special to see them, and I want to see newer stars built. That's the cycle of professional wrestling, and right now, we're not getting that.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because I remember days of pay-per-views, especially when they were brand-exclusive pay-per-views, where I would look forward to some of the undercard matches, and I would look forward to the U.S. title feuds and the Intercontinental Championship feuds. Like, I find it kind of crazy that, like, yes, the match was great, but the U.S. number one contender championship match of the Fatal 5-Way where Ricochet ended up winning, I find it kind of insulting to that whole group of wrestlers that they were given just a week to build a feud with Samoa Joe for a title before a pay-per-view event. And as I've brought up several times already, but Finn Balor holding one of the most prestigious titles on the main roster is just irrelevant, and we just don't see him. And there's not even a challenger for him. Like, no one brings up the Intercontinental Championship, and that's after years and years and years of The Miz repeatedly saying that he was trying to elevate it and make it relevant. And again, I just think it all comes back to the wildcard rule, because they're just devoting so much time to the same 3 or 4 storylines and then recycling it. And as you said, Raw gets the main advancement and then SmackDown kind of just picks up the scraps. So I just find it really a disservice to a lot of these wrestlers who are very talented that they can't get the proper airtime. Now, obviously Apollo Crews, like, I wish he would stop smiling, damn it. Like, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. But maybe if he got a somewhat relevant feud, he could become something. I think Andrade is one of the best up-and-comers they have, but how are they supposed to take that next step and advance themselves when all they get is a minute and a half of backstage airtime in a feud that we don't even really know why it's happening?
You can't. The answer is you can't. You can't succeed with that little airtime. I know that the old adage is maximize your minutes. Well, when you don't even get minutes, you get minute. You can't do it. I mean, it's just not feasible. It's not realistic, and it's not fair to expect any performers to excel if they're getting that little airtime. And it's unfortunate because I understand that there are some wrestling fans out there that don't have the patience to build new stars and that they just want to see all the big names all the time and they don't care about these people that we don't know their names. Well, why don't you learn their names? Because eventually the people that you like to see all the time and that's all you care about, you want to see your favorite moves and your biggest stars, they will be cycled out because Father Time wins all the time. You need to constantly have people up and coming. You need to have that farm system, which is why NXT is so brilliant. And credit to Triple H for his vision and his execution of it, because that is the breeding ground for the stars of tomorrow. And so when you don't have that mentality on the main roster, eventually you're going to be so reliant and heavy on the top stars that you are, quote, top stars of Roman and Seth and Drew, whatever, that what if they get injured? What if they decide to leave and their contract expires, they go to a different promotion? There are so many variables and factors that I understand you can't get everybody hot all the time, but you certainly can add new things to their character. You can progress them in different ways. There are ways to advance characters and move them along and give everybody an equal share of the time that is allotted on SmackDown. I know SmackDown's 2 hours, which is why I enjoy the show more, but they need to understand that while all the big stars do indeed draw ratings, you need to also build new stars. And you can't do that if the current stars are sucking up all the airtime. So one more thing I want to get to, and then I want to talk about Stomping Grounds and get your predictions. What are your thoughts on the 24/7 championship? Still fun, kind of corny, in between?
I think that it's done better than I would have anticipated. I'll give them that. They've come up with some creative things to like keep me interested. Like, you know, the whole elevator scene is kind of funny. I found the whole airplane thing going to Jeddah funny, how R-Truth covered Jinder Mahal and then everyone chased him through the plane. I think that given my ultra low expectations for it, it's really succeeded. I think that they've timed it properly. Unlike how when it originally started, I think they've kind of reduced how many times they use it on a programming show. So yeah, I think even though it started maybe a bit too much to just get the point across, I think the past month or so, they've done a pretty good job with it.
I'll second that. I mean, I was a lukewarm proponent of it when Mick Foley introduced it in front of my hometown crowd that gave it no reaction, so congratulations, Albany. I was a proponent of it, and we all kind of alluded to it as the PG hardcore title because it's got the same rules. And we all poo-poo on what it looks like and, oh, it looks like awful. I don't need the belt to look good. I don't really care about that part of it. I don't care what the belt looks like so much because it's not a belt I'm supposed to take seriously anyway. But in execution, they are certainly going wild with the creative on this. And the creative is, the upside is there is no limit to what they could do, the scenarios that could happen. And I think that it adds a little bit to that unpredictability that Vince McMahon is looking for. But at the same time, they need to be careful to not undermine their own product with such a joke of a championship. And there's that fine line. And right now, I think they're teetering on it. I love R-Truth as champion. I loved the Drake Maverick interaction because Drake Maverick has been going all in on his character on social media, putting up wanted signs for R-Truth, just saying, I'm going to find you. He bumps into him backstage a couple of weeks ago. They look at each other and R-Truth takes off. They have a really good chemistry right now, a very unexpected chemistry with Drake Maverick and R-Truth. And R-Truth obviously loses this week because Drake Maverick dresses up as Carmella, which was really funny, and Drake Maverick ends up tweeting out that you guys don't know how much those fake boobs cost, or something like that. Like, I mean, just the hilarity of it it does make me chuckle. It is a nice bit of a comedy segment to cut through all of the quote serious storylines. I'm fine with it right now. I think that eventually that it will get boring and we'll all go, oh my God, okay, what are they doing this week? This is getting boring. This is stupid. This is totally unbelievable. I'm sure we'll get there. I mean, this has a shelf life. This championship does have a shelf life, but for the moment, I'm enjoying it. I love the completely impossible scenarios that happen. Do I enjoy that R-Truth is constantly being chased by, I don't know, the same 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that aren't having anything going on backstage, and they all just chase him in a straight line all the time? I mean, it gets a little bit cartoonish, but I'm enjoying it for what it is right now, and I'm on board. It'll eventually, wear itself out, and the expiration date will happen, but I'm fine with it.
One thing about one of the wrestlers that's constantly chasing R-Truth, because I think R-Truth has been fantastic doing it. I love what Drake Maverick has done. I really enjoyed that elevator scene. I found that pretty comedic. But I don't know about you, Matt, but how lost does EC3 look in every single segment? He looks like just completely lost. Like in that elevator scene, I remember when everyone's fighting each other, he was literally being restrained by the ref, but the ref wasn't even looking at him. Like it's like he couldn't get around the 5'5" ref, and it's almost distracting that as soon as a segment comes out, like I automatically focus on him, and he's just so bad. And I don't want to be mean, but he's just bad, and he's never even said a word. And okay, his segment on Raw when he got clobbered by Seth with the chair was purely funny, but aside from that, just like the 24/7 championship moments, like he stands out in the worst ways, and I just can't understand how clumsy he is.
Yeah, this is a tough one with EC3. As you said with the elevator segment, yeah, I'm on board with that. It made no sense that he couldn't get past the referee. It's preposterous. I mean, ridiculous. And when he came to the main roster, I believe he was in a very, very short program with Dean Ambrose. I think he lost one week and won another week. The crowd didn't react to him in any kind of significant way. And he's just all over the place in the 24/7 championship, trying to be a referee. They don't know what the hell to do with him. I mean, it's very clear right now. They're going here, there, up, down, left, and right. And what's very interesting, though, beyond this disaster that he has so far had in WWE, is that when they were doing all of the promos for, hey, we're bringing up new stars, and Lars Sullivan was one of the freaks, and obviously he's injured for the next 6 to 9 months with a knee injury, which is I'm kind of sad about, honestly. I think that when you have EC3 as one of the stars of that promo, if you remember, it was just craziness. I mean, they were talking about all these new stars that are going to come up, boom, 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 and then it slowed down and was EC3 walking into a room in a suit. And you were like, oh, well, they're clearly going to focus on him because he seems to be the focal point of this promo video that they aired like 400 times leading up to all of these this change that they were implementing. And since then, they've done absolutely nothing. Zero, less than zero with EC3. He doesn't look lost. He looks like he's in another universe right now. He looks like he doesn't know what to do, where to go, and I really hope that they know and figure out what to do with him.
Yeah, I think it hurts his reputation even more that there was so much hype behind him. And okay, his initial feud with Dean Ambrose was underwhelming, but you can't just pour cold water on him. I'm not going to lie. I'm not the biggest fan of him, and I wasn't as soon as he debuted. But, what are you saying to the other guys coming up from NXT that you build and hype up this guy so much, and then he's just become such an utter joke? I don't know how he could ever come back from what happened to him on Raw, where he got obliterated with the chair, and then the New Day mocks him where, again, come on, really? He's that, they were acting as if he was dead. Let's be real. I'm all about comedy, but after a certain point, it just kind of becomes hokey and unrealistic. But aside from that, that segment alone buried him. There's no way that he can ever come back from this and be a somewhat relevant wrestler or superstar, as they like to say. And I can't understand how that early into this guy's career, especially after all of this hype behind him, and you thought that they were going to give him this big push, especially that he had that opening feud with Dean Ambrose. Obviously, Ambrose was on his way out, so he wasn't held in as high a regard. But it's just, how could you bury a guy so fast and not even give him a chance to breathe?
Well, they're doing it, and I didn't follow EC3 too much before his WWE entrance, to be honest with you. Like, I knew a little bit about him. I didn't follow him beyond or before that too much. So if you didn't know anything about him before, you would just think that this guy is here to be used as an enhancement talent. And like you said, he's basically laying there like a corpse after a few chair shots. Really? I mean, all he did was get hit in the back. He didn't get hit in the skull. Chair shots to the skull are gone. I mean, you got knocked out from being hit in the back? Really? I mean, and then they made a reference to Weekend at Bernie's and all that stuff. I mean, it was clearly just a segment to try to make people laugh. Or Vince McMahon, sitting backstage, knee slapping and chuckling. And a lot of this humor seems to be Vince McMahon driven. And 9 times out of 10, Vince McMahon humor is not the majority of the audience's taste in humor. So, it's really just a shame what they're doing with him. Find something for him. Do anything. I don't care what it is, but find something and stick with it. And right now they don't have a direction. So let's get to Stomping Grounds, and I want to start right at the top of the card here. Not waste any time. I'm going to go with the Universal Championship of Seth Rollins and Baron Corbin. That floating guest referee is out there. I think we all know who it's going to be. So I won't steal your thunder. What are your thoughts on this match? Who's that special guest referee going to be?
If I were to take a guess, I would have to guess Elias. But again, I'm not too sure of it. You seem more sure than me. But I was going to guess Elias. I think that no matter who the guest referee is going to be, I think Seth Rollins is going to win. And I just think that Baron Corbin's kind of a placeholder challenger right now. I do like what they've done with Baron Corbin, but just not enough to overtake Seth Rollins for the title.
Yes, I agree with the outcome, so I'm going to second that Seth Rollins isn't going to lose. He's on fire. Baron Corbin as champion would be a disaster. Ratings disaster, more than it is now. Seth is really got a lot of momentum, to use the corporate buzzword. He is on a tear, and he won at WrestleMania. Again, my argument that WrestleMania championship wins need to stick, and this one will. So my pick, though, for referee, and I'm only saying this confidently because I had heard someone suggest it and go, oh, how is this person not going to be the special guest referee? And that is one and only Brock Lesnar as special guest referee. Because if Baron Corbin has him as a special guest referee, then it would essentially put doom and gloom to Seth Rollins as champion. I mean, at least in the story arc of Brock Lesnar being the special guest referee. And if he is, and then Baron Corbin, which I think he's going to lose, somehow Seth Rollins wins the match, but he'll be beaten down and worn down from the match, which would put Brock Lesnar in a very advantageous position, which Brock Lesnar would want to be in if he was a special guest referee, to cash in his Money in the Bank contract. Do I think he's going to cash in? Maybe not. But the scenario just seems to make sense that Brock Lesnar would be the special guest referee. What do you think about that?
I think that would be great. I think it would be really cool. I didn't even think about Brock Lesnar. I was just under the impression that they were going to kind of let Brock sit a bit and lurk in the weeds, and AKA let him have time off that we all know he loves. But no, if that's the case, I think it would be the best case scenario. It would kind of suck to have him, take the belt away from Seth, because one thing I'll say about Brock is that they can have another failed cash in. So the only reason why I think they may not do that is to build off what you said. They want Seth to run with the belt here, have a good long title run, but they can have another failed cash in for the third year in a row, or also just diminish the value of the Money in the Bank. So I think that's a really cool concept. I'm just not sure if they would go with that and have Brock fail, cash it in.
Very possible. Yeah, I don't think a failed cash in by Brock Lesnar especially would, I think that would be disastrous. As much as nobody really wants to see Brock Lesnar as champion anymore, I think the prestige and value of the Money in the Bank briefcase is worth more at this point, because Seth could come back the next night, challenge Brock somehow, and even win it back the next night on Raw. I mean, it's very possible. So that Brock Lesnar could cash in, and maybe he does, and maybe we just say, okay, good. Brock doesn't have a championship. He doesn't have Money in the Bank. Go away for a little while. And we keep thinking Brock's just going to kind of go away. And every time we think he's going to go away and sit on his farm in Minnesota, he ends up showing up out of nowhere. And I like that to a point because it's not predictable. But at the same time, Brock Lesnar needs something in his character as well. It's just kind of the same old Brock. He's Brock freaking Lesnar. I mean, think about who he is. He doesn't need to pick people apart at their weakest moment. He is the guy that was the UFC champion and came in and dominated the sport. He's the guy that came in and demolished the WWE stars, the wrestlers. Think about who he's beaten. He's beaten Goldberg. He's beaten Big Show. He's beaten The Rock. Like, you don't need to have Brock Lesnar playing this heel character as this guy that, I'm only gonna cash in when you're at your weakest. Brock doesn't need to be that. And I know he's a heel, but that's not Brock. I need Brock to be Brock, and Brock hasn't felt like himself for quite some time now.
Yeah, and that's why I found it kind of weird that he planned his cash in after the Super Showdown, which I know how you felt about that show because I listened to your rant about it. But I think that a scenario of Brock being the ref and then cashing in on vulnerable Seth Rollins, I don't think that would be too good for his character. I think, as you mentioned, they should get Brock back on the whole train of doing everything face-to-face, beating the hell out of the guys face-to-face. He doesn't need any advantages. That's why I did find it a bit weird that they put the Money in the Bank on him so quickly. But look at Braun Strowman, how he did it last year. Obviously, it was a failed cash-in, but in a similar aspect, he wanted to face Roman face-to-face. So I think Brock will eventually do that. But I'm kind of expecting something more down the line towards SummerSlam a bit, because as of right now, I think people are still on their heels for Brock to come back, because we had 3-4 weeks of Brock consistently being on television for a bit. So I think now they want to let people kind of forget about Brock a little bit and then finally come in and actually surprise people when he does show up.
It's very possible. I mean, that was just a logical choice that I was because I didn't think of it either. And I'm how did I not think of that? But it would make sense for him to come in as a special guest referee. I'm fine with the long periods of time without seeing Brock Lesnar, at least in his current incantation. I want to see a different Brock Lesnar, maybe one that even if he cuts his own promos or whatever, they're just short, sweet, to the point, because that's where Brock Lesnar lives and thrives. He's never been a good ad-lib long promo guy. That's why Paul Heyman's with him and is a perfect mouthpiece for him.
Yeah.
But I would also like to see somebody get an advantage on Brock Lesnar or face him face-to-face and get an advantage without having to kick him in the nuts. The only way that Seth Rollins has been able to get an advantage is by kicking him between the legs. That has been the only way. And as a babyface, I'm just come on. Even The Undertaker did it when he faced Brock Lesnar a couple of years ago. I don't want that. I want to see a babyface be able to go man-to-man, toe-to-toe, and be able to find a way to get an advantage on Brock without having to resort to that. And it diminishes the babyface's credibility every time I see it.
Yeah, and I think it shows just how much stock Vince has put into Brock Lesnar, and that he wants to build Brock as this bigger than life character that even the best of the best wrestlers need to cheat to beat him. But you're right, it takes away from the whole babyface, because yes, Seth climbed that mountain and finally beat Brock on the grandest stage of them all, but at what cost did he have to do that? So yeah, I would like to see someone beat Brock clean. Well, obviously we know Triple H did it and Goldberg did it, but it doesn't always have to be the select few that Vince chooses. And as we brought up before, he always relies on these established legends. But let Seth beat him clean, as Roman did, because it always kind of leaves that asterisk beside him, or that stain on him. And even now, Seth beat the holy hell out of him at Super Showdown, but you did it with a low blow, and 24 times you hit him with a chair. So again, it's cool to see him get the better of Brock, because it shows that he's smart and he'll do anything what it takes to win the title and take Brock down, which I could kind of get behind. But again, it would be nice to actually see him be able to beat Brock clean in true babyface fashion.
So I think we're both on board with Seth retains as long as Brock doesn't cash in.
Yes, 100%.
All right. So, with that said, moving on to the other big championship match, Kofi Kingston against Dolph Ziggler in a steel cage. I'm going to take a breath and a pause. What are your thoughts?
I think Kofi's going to win. I think Kofi's going to win clean because obviously Xavier got involved in the match at Super Showdown, which I liked because it allowed for the storyline to advance a bit and set up a rematch. I think it's probably going to be the match of the night. These two guys inside the steel cage is going to be something to be seen. But I think that eventually Kofi will come out on top. He's going to win, and then they'll finally close the book on the storyline and move on to bigger and better things. But I will add one tidbit that I do think that when Brock does cash in, it will be on Kofi and not Seth.
I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll happen on Sunday night, but people keep thinking it's definitely going to be Seth. It's going to be Seth. It's going to be Seth. And you're not even thinking about Kofi. And I think it very well could be. And think about the heat that would put on Brock Lesnar to beat Kofi Kingston. That feel-good story comes crashing down to a guy that is going to hold the WWE Championship, which has a hell of a lot more prestige than the Universal Championship does in lineage, and hold that championship hostage for months or maybe even years at a time. I wouldn't put it past Vince McMahon to do that, and it could very easily happen because we've seen Brock and we've seen Seth a couple of times, and now it's time for maybe a new opponent, and the guy we're not thinking of is Kofi Kingston. But to the match on Sunday, assuming again Brock doesn't cash in on Kofi, I'm looking forward to this match. You hit it on the head. This could easily be and should be on paper the best match of the night if given enough time. Both of them have very similar styles. They both sell well. They do have a lot of parallels, which Dolph alluded to, and they do. They are both very good in the ring, and if given enough time, this could be a classic. So my prediction is Kofi wins, hands down. Dolph goes away, and so let's get that out of the way. The only tidbit I have, and an issue I have, is just the premise of a steel cage match itself. And I went off a little bit on this last night. I don't understand why and how escaping a cage or walking through a door is a legal way of winning a match. Basically, whoever can run away from their opponent the fastest or the best wins the match. And think about this. All you have to do if you're a super athlete is you could throw somebody in the other side of the ring, and if you really wanted to, you could climb over the cage in the blink of an eye. And think about all these athletic, crazy things that they do, but they just somehow can't get up that cage in time and draw it out. I don't like the fact that you can open a door and walk out and win. In what world is that a legal way of winning any sports situation? Whether I don't care what sport you're talking about, whether it's a competitive sport, professional wrestling, it just doesn't make sense. And the fact that we're supposed to believe that a steel cage always keeps out interference. There's nobody going to be able to help you. You're not going to have any help. It's just you and me. Well, the last time I checked, a steel cage match is a no disqualification match, which means the world could come in that match. The entire locker room could come in that match, and it would still be legal. So it just, every time I hear that and hear those two arguments, it just hurts my brain. It should be pinfall or submission only inside of a steel cage.
Yeah, I know. I've always personally hated the walk through your door, the walk through your doorway to victory, because you're right. Like, anyone, if they try hard enough, could scratch and claw their way out of there or weasel their way out. And I don't think I've ever seen someone actually win by going out of the door. I don't so much mind the over the top of the cage thing, because at least that proves an obstacle. Like, you have to actually climb the damn thing and go over it before the guy can come up and stop you. But yeah, the whole argument of oh yeah, there's going to be no more interference this time. Oh, come on. One of the most iconic steel cage matches, well, maybe not iconic, but one that sticks out in my mind, is the one that The Rock and Stone Cold had after WrestleMania 17. When Vince and Triple H got in the cage and they just beat the holy hell out of The Rock and formed the two-man power trip. And I'm just okay, well, what the hell was the point of that? They just basically trapped The Rock inside and destroyed him. But yeah, I've hated that whole narrative, and it's gone on for as long as I could remember about no one's going to get in now, it's just you and me. Then maybe I've just become accustomed to it. and I don't really, react to it the same way anymore. But yeah, I'm with you there. The whole notion of being able to walk out the door and win, or that we're supposed to believe that no one's going to get inside. And I think what makes it worse is that we all know that when it's actually a match where no one's getting inside, it's the Hell in the Cell. And I think that makes it a bit more less believable for us, because WWE has an exact other match that does that exact purpose that the steel cage match pretends to do.
Yep, they do. They do. But as much as I would love to make the Hell in a Cell a prestigious match and make it only for extremely deserving, heated rivalries that, you've gone from a standard wrestling match maybe into a street fight, then you go to the steel cage and the blow off is a Hell in a Cell. I mean, it doesn't have to happen like that all the time, but that to me would be how a natural progression of a heated blood feud would end, and that the Hell in a Cell would be the blow off of that feud. And the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view unfortunately dissolves all of the mystique of the Hell in a Cell because it's built into the pay-per-view schedule. So we're, whatever feuds happen to be going on at that time, we'll just stick you in the cell because it's a cute gimmick. And it's killed the Hell in a Cell to me. The Hell in a Cell is such a sacred, special place that so many amazing matches have happened, so many amazing moments, from the very first one with Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, which was the very first program that I remember watching, and that drew me in. Like I was hooked forever because of that program. All the way, obviously, Mick Foley's fall off the cage to Cactus Jack retiring at the hands of Triple H, and I believe it was 2000 when he pedigreed him on top of the cell, to the Armageddon pay-per-view, and Rikishi got chokeslammed off of it into like a bunch of wood chips. I mean, there's so many things that happen inside the cell that are special that when you put it into a pay-per-view schedule, completely kills the mystique of it. But I'm getting way off track. But you're right. They have a structure that could do exactly what they're telling us could do. There's no roof on the cage. It's not even a cage by definition has a roof. This is like a four-walled, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not a true cage. So yeah, they are making us supposed to believe that nobody can interfere. But even in Hell in a Cell, you've seen people hide under the ring up until the point when they're supposed to come out. I mean, you've seen wacky things happen, but less so. But back to this match, I'm really looking forward to it. I think they could blow the roof off the place, and I'm expecting a lot of high spots, a ton of near falls, a zigzag off the top. I'm expecting some crazy crap because these two are capable of it, and I expect Kofi to come out on top in the end. So Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre, I'm a little bit torn on this. I don't think this one's as easy as most people think. And the reason is Drew McIntyre has been groomed over the past couple of months to be a top guy. Yet Roman Reigns is the elder statesman of Vince McMahon being the top guy. He's the big dog. He's the gatekeeper to being, the top guy. But we saw them face at WrestleMania, which we're all supposed to forget. This time around, I think the program has been built much better, much more properly. I'm much more invested in this program than I was at WrestleMania, which kind of felt like a last minute, we'll throw these two big guys together and they'll have a match. Roman came out on top in that match. I wouldn't be so sure that Roman comes out on top in this match as revenge. I think since this is the first time that they're officially meeting, and I say that in air quotes, I say Drew McIntyre wins this, and I say that because I think Drew needs the win more than Roman does. What do you think?
I'm with you. I think Drew's going to win this. I think that they're fully behind building this stable with Shane and Drew and the Revival. But I think, like you said, I think Drew needs to win more. He hasn't really had a big-time pay-per-view victory in a while now. And I think they want him to be established as an actual threat, not just a lackey or just the right-hand man of Shane McMahon. They want him to be his own guy and be able to fight Roman Reigns on his own and be able to take him out. Now, in saying that, I don't think he's going to win clean. I think there will be outside the ring shenanigans from obviously Shane, maybe the Revival, maybe Elias or what have you. But I think when it all finishes, it will be Drew McIntyre coming on top. And in some way, shape, or fashion, I feel like this is all going to culminate at SummerSlam. But, Shane gets that win against Roman at Super Showdown. I think they're going to make Roman lose again here due to outside interference. and just keep Roman's frustrations building and boiling and culminate down the line. But as for this match on Sunday, I think Drew comes out with the win and gets some more momentum behind him.
They have to. It's almost as if Drew has to win this because of everything that they've put in front of him and everything he's talked about and said. He has to back up his words. I don't care if it's a clean win over Roman Reigns. And you know what? I would actually prefer a clean win. I know he's a heel, and heels traditionally win by hook or crook, low blows, feet on the ropes, ref isn't looking, foreign object. I want to see Drew outright beat Roman Reigns with the Claymore, which has been established as a killer move, and it looks like Drew McIntyre it looks like a shotgun going off. I mean, it's sold really well. Nobody's kicked out of it. It's a money finisher, and I would like to see Drew McIntyre outright beat Roman Reigns. That to me would be the most beneficial to Drew. It would establish him as a credible threat, not just a guy that uses any means necessary. All heels don't have to do that. You could be a guy that beats your opponent clean as a heel, but what you stand for is demonic. It's just nasty. Who you are as a person is terrible, even if you're winning matches clean. And I think Drew could do this because what it'll do is, yes, it'll get him over as a heel, as a credible heel. But when he turns babyface eventually, the fans will remember that he was this guy that just came out and kicked ass. And now when he flips, you're going to remember that. So, of course, that's down the line. I wouldn't want him to turn babyface for a year or two. But I think that Drew needs to win, and he needs to win clean and decisively.
Yeah, and because, I think what you said about him turning babyface one day is perfect. I think that they need to give the fans something to take Drew McIntyre seriously because, yeah, he's talked a big game and he's beaten a lot of wrestlers on side matches, but, there's yet to be that one big-time feud that he's really culminated in with a victory because he didn't beat Roman at WrestleMania. Sure, he had his way with Dean Ambrose, but we know that Dean Ambrose was just doing the favors going out the door. But, yeah, I think that for the long-term vision of Drew, that he really needs this win. They've done a great job building him to now. I really like what his partnership with Shane McMahon, but I do kind of fear that if he doesn't get this win, he'll just be viewed as an afterthought because it would look kind of strange. Okay, well, Shane could beat Roman, but Drew can't. So yeah, it would hurt his reputation. I think that Roman could survive it because Roman could just bounce back from anything due to the writing and how WWE has built him. Come back and survive a loss to Drew McIntyre. So yeah, I really think this is a crucial match, Drew, and he really needs this victory to build himself in the future.
Roman is elastic. I think that's a good point to bring up. Roman can survive, and he can survive a big string of losses because Roman has been established for so long in the minds of fans that he is a top guy. And at any moment, regardless of how terrible of a losing streak he goes on, who he loses to, he could come back at any moment with fire in his eyes and just start let me say the tagline, start kicking ass and taking names. Oh. He could do that. I mean, don't even get me started on that forced, nonsensical, corporately forced into every promo garbage. So that's what I think about that. It's awful. But Roman could do that. Roman could easily come back regardless of the losing streak, which is why Drew needs this tenfold over Roman.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Matt. You hit it on the head there. Because Roman just keeps getting knocked down, and he will get up, and he always will. And even just the whole real life battle he had with leukemia, that no matter how many times he gets knocked down, he will be built back up. But Drew needs it, and I think Drew needs to kind of get the jackpack put on him and blown away here in the trajectory of succeeding. And I think they're kind of doing that in tandem with Shane McMahon right now. But he also has to find some, solo success at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So let's move on to the Raw Women's Championship, the Becky Lynch versus Lacey Evans. We alluded to this a little bit before, so I honestly don't have a whole lot to add to this other than I think that this will be a better match than their first, which I didn't think was a disaster, but it's their second match. They should get a feel for each other more. They probably will get a little bit more time. I think Becky wins, and I think that's the end of the story. I honestly don't have a whole lot to add to this. I think just as Dolph will go into the background, I think Lacey Evans will fade into the background into another program after Becky Lynch beats her here. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I said before, I'm a big fan of Lacey Evans, but she's not ready yet to overtake someone like Becky Lynch. I think Becky's going to win clean and kind of close the book on the story for this particular feud. But yeah, we kind of said all we had to say before. There's not too much to add. Becky wins clean and just closes it off.
Yeah, I mean, case closed, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very straightforward here, I believe. So, all right, what about the SmackDown Women's Championship? Bayley and Alexa, a little more interesting. So, you go ahead. What do you think?
I like this story a lot. So I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry. I think that it's going to end kind of in a disqualification of sorts. I think that it's going to, I would say, I'm not sure who will win. I would probably say Alexa wins via disqualification and warrants a future title match, because I don't think that Alexa is going to take the belt away from Bayley so soon after she won it. And for the women, the next pay-per-view after she won it, because they didn't compete at Super Showdown. But, yeah, I think it's going to end in a disqualification match due to Nikki Cross getting, not a disqualification match, but a disqualification finish due to Nikki Cross somehow getting involved. So no clean finish and just something to result in a future match down the line to keep this story going. As we both mentioned, we both really like this story. I don't think they're quite ready to close it off completely. So I would say Alexa wins disqualification, but Bayley keeps the title.
Man, I feel like I'm just going to repeat what you said. It's but the only thing I would change on that is I think it easily and probably will be a disqualification, but Bayley wins via disqualification after Nikki, unintentionally gets caught by the referee, hitting her in the head, or kicking her, or pulling her off the apron, or something. Something will cause a disqualification. I don't care who wins the disqualification, because either way the championship doesn't change hands. But yes, I think that is the case. This is the start of the program. I mean, this is their first match. It can't be a clean finish either way. I believe that is going to be a 3, maybe longer pay-per-view match, or a pay-per-view long feud. This could actually go all the way to SummerSlam. I really believe that, if this is done correctly and we have no more Bayley, this is your life segments. This could be a program that does culminate at SummerSlam. So yeah, this is going to be a finish that has nothing clean about it. There's going to be a lot of tomfoolery in this finish, and that's just WWE logic. I mean, there's other ways to do it, but just based on how WWE presents their programs, especially at the beginning of programs, yeah, I think that's really the only way that this program can start off, is via disqualification or some kind of funky ending.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because if you have I don't think it'd be wise to take the belt off of Bayley this way. And if Bayley wins, the story's pretty much done. So I think that if she wins clean, that is, then the story's pretty much done. So yeah, I think in some way there's going to be some nonsense that goes on outside, something to keep the storyline going and warrants Alexa Bliss to have another match. And I think that's good, as I just said, because these two clearly do have chemistry outside the ring. They will have chemistry inside the ring. They're two very good in-ring competitors. And I think the whole wrinkle of the effect of Nikki Cross has led to a way more complex story than we've just been presented on the surface.
Yeah, we've kind of said it all. I mean, this is the beginning of a program. So, okay, United States Championship, Samoa Joe and Ricochet. I'm going to toss it to you first on this.
I think Samoa Joe wins here. I'm hoping, as you brought up before, that it's a start of a long run. I think Ricochet won that Fatal 5-Way match to take the first loss to Samoa Joe. I don't think Ricochet's going to beat Samoa Joe at Stomping Grounds to win his first title. I just don't think the stars are aligned for that. I think that it'll be a very good match. I'm looking forward to it, but I just don't see how Ricochet comes out. I think it's a good first step to get Ricochet's feet wet a bit in the title scene and his first kick at the can of a title. But no, there's no way that he can come out here with a victory. I think Joe wins.
So my brain is telling me, don't pick Ricochet. This is a very easy pick. It's a slam dunk. The problem is everything that we just talked about a little while ago about Samoa Joe and the way that WWE treats him. I could see Ricochet winning this, and I'm going to pick him for that reason, that WWE has not only devalued Samoa Joe to this point, but also they don't seem to really care about the United States Championship itself. So by Ricochet winning it, it's not the most prestigious. It's not in line with or at the same level as even the Intercontinental Championship, even if it's presented to be, it's not. So for Ricochet to win this, I think the fans would go nuts. The fans are behind him because he does really crazy, wacky moves, even though we haven't heard a word from him yet. He is exciting. He's fun to watch. All of that, which is true. So I think Samoa Joe loses here. I'm not going to bet any money on it at all. Then this is probably a dumb pick. But I'm going to go. There's always those one or two matches that you think are locks that Vince ends up in going, oh no, they think this is going to happen. This looks too predictable. We're gonna change it up. And this could be that one. This could be that one that is that sleeping giant. So I'm going to go with Ricochet winning the United States Championship here to shake things up, as Vince McMahon would say. I'm just trying to get in that man's brain, and I think that Ricochet could win this and try to bring some life back to the United States Championship. And do I want that to happen? No. Do I think that should happen? No. But I could see a case of Vince McMahon wanting it to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the points you just outlined, it could very well happen. Like, I would have never thought in a million years that Rey Mysterio would have beat Samoa Joe for the U.S. title. And just the way that Samoa Joe has been treated, as all the points you just brought out, it's completely realistic. And I have to keep bringing myself back down to earth about the U.S. title because you're right. It's not that prestigious anymore. They don't seem to care about it. It is kind of an afterthought. So even if Ricochet were to win, it's really not a big deal. And that would kind of suck for Ricochet. Like, his first title win is supposed to be this big monumental achievement, but it's the U.S. title who no one really cares about. But no, yeah, I think that it could go either way just based on McMahon wanting to swerve us. I don't think that's a bad pick at all on your part.
And think about the way Samoa Joe, quote, won the United States Championship. He inexplicably had his long-time heated rival just hand it to him. So that tells you what Vince McMahon thinks about the United States Championship. So this could, now I'm kind of like talking myself into it, but I really believe Ricochet could win this, so that's my pick. SmackDown Tag Team Championships with Daniel Bryan and Rowan against Heavy Machinery. I think this one is a pretty darn good lock, and I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this, that Daniel Bryan and Rowan retain, and my God, they should retain. I enjoy Heavy Machinery. I enjoy Otis and Tucker, especially Otis, who's clearly the star out of the two. They're funny, but they're also serious when they need to be, and they're legitimate. So they're not just a comedy act only, but they're not ready. Just as Ricochet, it doesn't seem ready. This one, really, they are really not ready. And Daniel Bryan and Rowan are on a roll as the tag team champions on SmackDown Live. And they're bringing credibility back to the tag team division. They're clearly the top team. There's just no reason to have Heavy Machinery win this match. Daniel Bryan and Rowan walk away as champions.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I love Heavy Machinery. I'm going to sound like I'm echoing you here, but yeah, they're just not ready, especially in a SmackDown world that the tag team division isn't especially deep. I think Rowan and Daniel Bryan are single-handedly carrying it and making those titles relevant just because of the star power attached to Daniel Bryan. And give Rowan credit, like you brought up before, he's done a really good job. But yeah, there's just no logical scenario how Heavy Machinery comes out with a win. I think it's going to be a good match. I think it's going to be a entertaining match. I hope that it's not the last match these two teams have, but yeah, I think Rowan and Daniel Bryan come away with a win here.
Yeah, I really have nothing more to add to this. I mean, I think it'll be an entertaining match. I think it'll be, physical. It'll be just a very, I think, smooth, logical, ends with, even if it's by hook or crook, Daniel Bryan does something underhanded. I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't care how Daniel Bryan and Rowan retain. They just need to retain. Just end of subject. New Day versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Whew. Your thoughts?
I wish that it was a harder pick, that honestly, but as we've seen Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn being utilized lately, I'm gonna go with the New Day because just like how buried Zayn and Owens have been, but I could see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn pulling out the swerve here, beating the New Day, but I just feel like the New Day has taken such a and by New Day I mean obviously Big E and Xavier Woods. I feel like they've taken such a back seat to Kofi's title reign that they've almost been an afterthought, and they need this win. But then you could also say on the other hand that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn need the win. But I think when all is said and done, that the New Day's going to come out with the win here, just solely based on how Zayn and Owens have been booked recently.
You're right. I'm trying to talk myself into Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn winning. I'm trying to come up with a reason and trying to convince myself to pick them. I just can't. I can't pick them for the fact that they haven't won a match since they came back. And yeah, Vince McMahon this could be another one of the swerves that, people think that New Day is just going to win and Kevin and Sami are going to lose because they've continued to lose. I don't think this is a swerve because there's no reason to do the swerve in this case. There's no championship on the line. Clearly, Vince does not think very highly of either Kevin or Sami as long-term single stars in WWE. So I think New Day wins and Xavier and Big E come out on top. Will I be absolutely stunned if Kevin and Sami win? No, I won't, because they honestly need the wins more than anybody on the roster. But at the same time, look at the track record. Their track record is awful. It's abysmal. So I'm going to go with the New Day, and it's sad, but that's my pick.
Yeah, and it feels like we're both kind of getting depressed here, but yeah, it's you want it to be more of like a hard pick. You want to have trouble picking this pick, but it isn't a hard pick because you just know that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn aren't taken seriously in the eyes of Vince McMahon. And it's really sad to see, but yeah, there's just no way that I could see them coming out with a win here.
I can't. I really want to. I'm trying. And I do. I sound depressed because I am, because I can't believe that I'm not having a hard time with this. I'm trying to come up with something in my brain, but it's very depressing. So moving on, Raw Tag Team Championship, the Revival versus the Usos. I think this one's another one. This card up and down the line looks very predictable, and it looks like you could make a case of no championships changing hands at all on the entire card. And I think in general that will be the case here, with the exception of the United States Championship, as I'm going out on a limb. But this Raw Tag Team Championship, I don't see how the Revival lose them to the Usos. I just don't. I think the Revival, with Shane McMahon behind him and the McMahon power behind him and the stable that they're in, they don't lose here. I think that the Revival and the Usos are going to have a very good match. This could be a sleeper of a match that people are overlooking. And again, if given the time, that's the key, they could have a very, very good match. Like 3.5, maybe even higher out of 5 stars. They could have a hell of a match. I just don't know if they'll be given the time. And ultimately, the Revival comes out as champions. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Revival are going to come out on top as well. I think the Usos could survive a victory, as opposed to the Revival that, although they are multi-time tag team champions, it seems like every time they have a chance to defend the titles, they are unable to, whether it be against Gable and Rude or Ryder and Hawkins. I think like a big statement win over arguably the best tag team in WWE right now is needed for them. I think if they were to drop the titles so soon after winning them, it would almost, I wouldn't be able to take them seriously. So I think this is a crucial opportunity for WWE to allow the Revival to get a big impact win against a team like the Usos and show that they are on that same level with them. So yeah, I really think the Revival come out with the win here, and they need the win here.
They do. And again, I'm not a hot potato title fan. I don't like title changes for the sake of title changes and, oh, that's newsworthy. I like long reigning champions, regardless of who's holding the belt. It means so much more when the belts change hands. So, in this case, in this day and age, long-term championship reigns last beyond a pay-per-view. Like, unfortunately, that is the scale and definition of what long-term now means. But yeah, Revival retains. I think you can pretty much take that one to the bank as well. And finally, the Cruiserweight Championship of Tony Nese versus Drew Gulak and Akira Tozawa. What do you think?
I'm going to say Tony Nese. I like the way that they built him. I think that when he beat Buddy Murphy at WrestleMania, it was a telltale sign that they were serious about him. I'm with you. I like the long title reigns here, so I think they're going to stick with Tony Nese here. They've built him well, and I think they're going to give him a bit more time before he drops the belt.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling on this, to be honest, because I don't have a lot of emotional investment in this, and I don't think most people do. I mean, however, 205 Live, they've been putting out some good matches as of late. There was some controversy in the finish of the number one contender Fatal 4-Way match, so Gulak and Tozawa got the opportunity. I think Tony Nese retains because I think he's got the most established character in the Cruiserweight division. He's a good champion. As you said, his win at WrestleMania was a statement made by WWE to say, hey, we're changing. This is changing of the guards here. So we're going to go with Tony Nese, and I think it's Tony Nese for probably the next few months. I don't see any reason to take the championship off him and just put him in matches because you know he can have good matches. And at the end of the day, though, he's going to be the champion, and I don't see anything different happening here.
Yeah, and, you know, as you brought up, like, it was a change of the guard, and they gave the reins to Tony Nese. And just in the fashion that the two challengers got put into the match, like the controversial finish at the end of the number one contenders match, I don't think that's the kind of, you know, storyline that would culminate in Tony actually losing the championship. I think it would be something of way more of like an intense storyline, a one-on-one storyline for a guy like Tony Nese to drop the belt. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good match. I think they're going to all put on a good show. As you mentioned, they've been putting on a good product there lately. But I don't think a guy like Tony Nese, after winning such a big match against Buddy Murphy, would lose it in this kind of fashion.
No, I think you're totally right. I honestly don't have a whole lot more to add to this. And it's just a shame that they have really defined down the Cruiserweight division. You know, WWE can't seem to find that perfect balance of being able to showcase this division in a way that feels legitimate and not just kind of the stepchild to, well, this is the main roster and we have this little side thing of the Cruiserweight division. It just doesn't feel like it's as important, at least the way they present it on air, as it should. And that's the problem that I have.
Yeah, and because, again, I know I always keep bringing it back up, but I remember how it was in the Ruthless Aggression era and how they weren't kind of just segregated into their own TV show. And the Cruiserweights could also be taken seriously. Like, look at Rey Mysterio. He started as a Cruiserweight. I remember the days of Tajiri being a Cruiserweight. And all these guys who were just taken more seriously because they could sometimes compete with guys on the main roster. So I have had a bit of a hard time taking the Cruiserweights seriously because even how they treat the Cruiserweights when they jump up to Raw, like it's almost like they're graduating to the big show. So I'm almost like, oh, okay, so is this like kind of on the par with NXT? Because when Cedric Alexander jumped from 205 Live to Raw, I was at the 205 Live there in Montreal on his final show, and it was almost like he was saying goodbye and he was moving on to bigger and better things. So on that respect, I've always kind of had a hard time getting emotionally invested into the new version of the Cruiserweight division.
WWE is just not doing what they should be to get people to care because they probably think people don't care. But the ironic thing is that people don't care because they are showing us they don't care, so how are we supposed to care? It's this vicious circle. And I just they aren't showing the respect that they should be for these athletes that are putting on matches that are going overlooked by the majority of fans because WWE is not presenting them as a big of a deal as they should be, so fans aren't tuning in. And again, it's just like this self-fulfilling prophecy of, see, these people aren't paying attention. They don't care. Well, we don't care because you're telling us you don't care, so how are we supposed to? It's just this, and I really believe that that's the psychology going on behind the scenes, and it's a shame because of the fact of how good some of these guys are. So, Anthony, anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to discuss?
No, I think we covered everything top to bottom. We really touched on all bases this week, I find.
We did, and it's easy. It's crazy how fast 2 hours can go when you're talking wrestling. It's amazing. Like I'm like, oh, it's probably been an hour, right? No, it's been 2 hours. So it's just that's what professional wrestling does, and I'm not complaining because that's what we love to talk about, and it's always great to be able to bring people on the show that are so much fun to talk to, and it's great to have you here as a co-host. So, but before we let you go, let everyone know where they can follow you as an official co-host now.
You can follow me at DiMarco25. I'll put out this caution. If you're going to follow me, I hope you like hockey because I'm all about that. I'm sure you've seen that, Matt, especially over the last month or so. I'm big into hockey, but yeah, at DiMarco25 is my handle. And I just want to say thank you again, Matt, for choosing me to be one of the permanent co-hosts. And thank you to everyone who wanted me to be one of the permanent co-hosts. I express my absolute gratitude, and it's my pleasure, and I can't wait to do it again in 3 weeks.
Definitely. I mean, 3 weeks flies by. I know it seems like a long time, but it'll be here sooner than you think. And if you like hockey, it is a good follow. I do say that. Like I am a casual hockey fan. I mean, being from the United States, it's not as like rabid as it is in Canada. However, once the playoffs come around and NHL gets into the mix here, like I do kind of pop in. So if you do like hockey, it's a good follow. You should definitely do that. And Anthony, it's been a pleasure and always good talking with you. And we will definitely be in touch, and you'll be on the show sooner than you think.
All right, man. Have a good night, and can't wait to do it again in 3 weeks.
Definitely. Take care.
Take care.